Now, when people talk about racists or neo-Nazis and white supremacists, they generally envision somebody from, say, maybe the South, right? Somebody like your garden variety racist would be somebody who's like got chewing tobacco, a mullet, wearing a Confederate flag hat, and spitting into a cup. So that's a pretty generalized impression of that. And then, of course, you think of white supremacists as people who are skinheads with Nazi tattoos and etc. But in reality, racism can actually take any form. Now, I want you to consider Michael Mazelis. Now, Michael Mazelis is a well-educated, very well put-together doctoral student with a very lucrative job with a prominent defense contractor, Northrup Grumman. So this guy is not somebody that you would consider to be a white supremacist. However, that's exactly what he is. Well, how do we know? Well, it's because ProPublica and Frontline have been looking into the leaders of some of the white supremacist groups that took part in the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally. Now, that, of course, is the rally which erupted into violence between neo-Nazis and fascists and people who are protesters or anti-fascists, and one person was unfortunately killed. That was Heather Heyer. She was a protester that was run down when a neo-Nazi ran his car into a group of protesters. Now, they've been looking into these groups, and especially one called the Rise Above Movement. Now, that group, of course, is your standard white supremacist group that hates Muslims, non-white immigrants, and, of course, Jews. Because, of course, you can't have a ultra-right-wing rally without hating Jews. Anyway, now the groups were able to quickly identify a number of the group's leaders and found evidence that put them into the middle of the violence in Charlottesville, as well as Berkeley, among other places. Now, Mazelis, however, was a bit more difficult to locate because he didn't fit the standard profile of what we would think would be a white supremacist. Now, in a video shot in Charlottesville, there was a bearded husky man that was seen in a red Make America Great Again hat. Now, his hands were wrapped up in boxing tape, which is what, of course, boxers use to protect their hands when they go and punch other people. Now, when you wrap your hands in that tape to go to a rally, you would expect, it would seem that you're expecting a little bit of violence, right? Well, that's saying that he was basically there to fight, which is exactly what he did. During one encounter, the man, who was first unidentified, pushed an African-American protester to the ground and began beating him up. Video of the episode shows moments later, a known RAM member had also choked and bloodied a pair of female counter-protesters. Now, that member was found to be Mazelis, using video footage and social media posts, as well as reporters who were on the ground, confirming his identity through an encounter with him outside of his home. So they found out that, oh, this guy who was in this video assaulting an African-American protester was actually Michael Mazelis. Now, let me give you a little bit of background on him first. He's a 29-year-old who is pursuing a PhD in UCLA's aerospace engineering program. So he seems like a pretty intelligent person, right? At least academically. Although I don't think he's all that intelligent, because for some reason he just can't tell the difference between black people and white people, and can't tell that they're the same on the inside. Now, in addition to his pursuits in education, Mazelis works as a system engineer for Northrop Grumman, as a giant defense contractor with a plant in California. Now, when approached by ProPublica and Frontline in front of his home in Lawndale, Mazelis said, I don't know anything about what happened in Charlottesville. I wasn't there. I think you got the wrong guy. And then he drove off. However, they, through different social media and through video, as well as from testimony from law enforcement officials, that is the guy. Mazelis is a member of the Rise Above movement. So, now the problem here is that, yes, he's a white supremacist, but he also has security clearance working for Northrop Grumman. Now, those security clearances are typically issued in a two-step process. Now, the Federal Office of Personnel Management conducts an investigation into the individual. The agency's findings are then forwarded to a special unit within the Department of Defense, which makes the final determination on whether the person should receive security clearance. Now, security clearance, of course, grants people access to classified or otherwise sensitive material concerning national security. So this guy, who was a violent white supremacist and part of a violent white supremacist group, has security clearance, has access to national security information that is classified. What? How? How does he still have that clearance? Apparently, the government or Northrup Grumman don't actually care. In fact, the company has taken no action against Ms. Ellis, who remains employed. A violent white supremacist still having a job at a defense contractor with security clearance, that is incredibly problematic. Incredibly problematic. Now look, RAM, I mentioned that before, right? The Rise Above movement. According to the FBI in previous investigations done by journalists, RAM is considered one of the most violent white supremacist groups in America. And what they do is they urge their members to go and get training in hand-to-hand combat as well as in law enforcement. So, look, that is also deeply problematic because now you have people with these racist ideologies that are inside the government. And in fact, we already know from previous reports that they actually have a pretty big presence within the military branches as well. People like that should not have a level of power. So there's two takeaways from this, right? Number one, racist can be just about anybody. The stereotypes are actually wrong. You can be somebody who is very well educated, very well put together, and look like a everyday regular person, and still be a horrific person on the inside. It doesn't matter your background, background or your education or your income. People can become racist. And of course, the other takeaway is that they are inside the government and they have power. And if that isn't scary, it should be. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.